I'm going to start this off with a little disclaimer. I encourage everyone to complete everything the game has to offer before doing any of these glitches, as it will take away from the very enjoyable experience of beating the game on your own. So we're going to jump right into how to do the glitch, but I do encourage that you stick around for the initial explanation, or at least return after you have experimented with it a bit, as later parts will kind of give you a deeper understanding of the inner workings and different things you can do with the glitch. Okay, this is it. The item you need to make the glitch work, the Shard of Darkness. And once you've obtained it, the run is a go. All you'll need is one of the other Sun and Moon inscription items. So for the sake of explaining the glitch, we're going to use the 2 Shards of Darknesses, as it's a little easier to keep track of which step you're on. Now, in a run without mods, it'll be much harder to obtain 2 Shards of Darkness. So most of the time, you'll be doing this with the solar eclipse or the lunar eclipse. You also need to maintain a certain amount of Omen inscription items. You need to maintain at least 3 in Omen when you drop the Shard of Darkness item. So if you have solar or lunar eclipse, you'll only need 4 total Omen items. But you'll need 5 Omen items if you have the Unknown Darkness, because you lose 2 in Omen when you drop it. So as I said, we're going to use 2 of the Unknown Darknesses because it's kind of easier, like I said, to keep track of where you're at. There's another way to tell which step you're on, but we'll get into that a little later. Now, you'll need to have full items and all required amounts in Omen, and some other item on the ground to pick up. So you'll be dropping the darkness a couple of times to initiate the glitch. Pay attention to the Shard of Darkness counter at the bottom of the screen. You'll notice that when I drop it, the counter stayed. So pick it up and drop it again, and now the counter is gone. Now, when I pick it back up, it'll say that basically I died once and I have 50 kills to go. So it should say 1 and 50. If you already died and you got a number of kills, it could be a different number, but what you basically want it to say 1 and then the number of kills you have to go. That has to be at the end of all your effects icons. Now, the first or next icon right after the Shard of Darkness will be the effect that's duped, or as I say, stacked in the background. So I'm going to activate Orc, and before the icon for Orc disappears, I'm going to pick up the item on the ground and drop the Shard of Darkness. So the game just stored in the background how many times I died with the Shard of Darkness and the Orc effect. You see that the Orc timer is gone, but the red aura is still on my character. And I've gained all effects of the Orc, but since the timer is gone, the effect will never go away. Now I'm going to do an example with an item that has no icon, like Mage's Necklace. You'll notice that it doesn't work the first time, and I think that's kind of because you need to drop it at least once or twice and pick it back up. But after that, you'll see here that it works just fine. Also, I've been saying Unknown Darkness, or I've been saying Shard of Darkness in some situations that I really mean Unknown Darkness. I'm going to do an example of timing with the Jenny Chain Sickle. I'm doing 2 different things here. Here at first, I'm just duplicating the Jenny Sickle, and if I was to hit an enemy with its effect, you would see it hits twice, because it's as if I have 2. But taking that a step further, I'm going to set it up here by leaving Jenny Sickle in my inventory. Now, when I jump, you gain that mode to swing the sickle. And if I was to swap out the darkness while in the air, it'll put that mode into the background. So now, even though I'm on the ground, I've stored that in air effect and have it permanently. A side note, you'll see that even though I stacked the mage's necklace in the background, its effect is still attached to having the item. This is the same with the Jenny sickle, so if I lose either of them, I lose the effect. Now this doesn't apply to all item effects gained, which will play a role in a later point. Now on to SKUL effects. There's one of two ways you can do this, and depending on what you're trying to gain will determine the method you need to use. Since you gain certain effects of SKULs the moment you pick them up, and you gain certain effects when you swap into them. But icons after the darkness icon take priority over the effects that, don't have an icon when storing them in the background. I'll go over priority a little more later. As you see here, I've swapped a number of times, but I'm going to store champion's gold form in the back. So no timer equals infinite champion mode. Now there's a couple of things to note here. One, if I swap from champion, I'll keep his mode on whomever I swap into. But if I swap back into champion, his timer will return, and I'll lose that mode when it runs out. So if you want to keep the mode of champion or a different SKUL on every other SKUL, you have to drop champion after you've stored his golden form in the background. The glitch also works on SKULs that have a bar timer under their health, except for some reason Berserker and Rider. I think I know why, and there's kind of a way to work around that as well. Now, for some reason, if you restart, you can carry some stacked effects over into another playthrough, as long as you don't completely close out the game. This seems to have always been the case in one form or another, though, like the original gold glitch and the pot of greed glitch. The main things that seem to be able to be carried over are SKUL effects like champions and gold obtaining effects like gold incense burner. It seems it has to be something that doesn't have a visible indicator of sorts. So things that change your stats wouldn't carry over because all your stats return to base when you restart. But as you can see in the video when I started with the wedding ring, it sells for more than it normally would because I've stacked the gold glitch game. And as you can also see, I've also carried over Gravedigger's effect of spawning souls, even though I don't have Gravedigger. This is pretty much useless unless you do have Gravedigger, but it does work with effects like King's Orb obtaining skill, because you can gain the stat boost with any character. Now on to more in-depth with timing. Now here I got the samurai, and I'm going to show you some timing and how to gain something like his moon slash infinitely. This will also work with Soul Knight's enhanced skills. So as you see, I've built the samurai's bar up to just it being one more hit. So after setting up the darkness, you'll do an attack to max out the bar. Now the last thing that happened was me obtaining Moon Slash. So I can now put that into the background. And after using it, the game will still think I have it. It's important that you don't proc any other effects though from doing the final attack, as that may get in the way of the timing. This stacking effect will also work on seemingly negative effects, like your movement speed going down during certain characters' concentration. You can also stack how much bar you obtain from doing attacks and specials with the samurai, leading to almost maxing the bar out from just one special attack. And here I'll also give you an example of being able to stack an item effect in the background and not need to retain the item to maintain the effect, which plays a big role in something I'll mention later as far as stacking things in the background. Side note, did you know that without any glitches or mods, Stigma Leg will still damage certain enemies that have like an invincible state? Like that big mushroom tree that you need to jump on in Act 1 and the shielded enemies in Act 2. So you can still damage them with the dodging thing while they seem to be invincible. And another side note, if you drop and pick up Heart of the Ascetic by exchanging it with something that increases your HP, it'll stop the draining effect of the Heart of the Aesthetic. That also doesn't require any type of glitch. Okay, on to inscription stacking. When it comes to stacking inscription effects, it can kind of be a little tricky, because most of the time when you gain the necessary amount of inscriptions, you're also picking up the item and gaining that effect at a weird time. So the timing can be an issue. So I said I would touch on priority later, and now I will. It seems to prioritize icons that are next to the darkness icon first, then items and their effects second, then effects that don't have a visible indicator, and after that, inscription effects. So like always, you want it to be the last effect gained. So if you want to, get your inscription effects and it takes 4, you need to be at 4 when you pick up the clone stamp. This can be easily gotten around with some inscriptions that, require you to do something else, or they have a timer on how often they activate, like courage proccing when you do damage at 4. So that's easier to manipulate, and it puts an icon up. So it's easier to get that one stacked. But without the clone stamp, I found that having duplicates of an item and dropping the dupe to pick up the same item may ignore everything else but the inscription gained. It's also easier to do the inscription gain with multiple clone stamps that have the same inscriptions on them. Also, for some reason, I've never gotten this to work with inscription totems. Another issue I used to have with one particular inscription, Fairy Tale, is stacking that cooldown effect. It wasn't until recently that I was able to get that to even work with the addition of Lake in a Bottle. So sometimes you kind of just got to do some experimenting with the items, or the timing, or where you're at in the process before you get something to work. Now, stacking dark abilities. So stacking dark abilities is a lot more difficult, and it takes a lot more setup. It's almost unrealistic that you'll get this without the mods, as you kind of need a number of items, dark abilities, or SKULs to get this to work. Because you need to have Unknown Darkness or Eclipse, 4 or 5 in Omen, the Priestess's Staff, 3 and only 3 in a Pot of Greed that hasn't been pretty much procced for its extra item, an Unknown Seed, and the dark ability Time Limited Life, or the SKUL Berserker at Legendary. The Priestess's Staff is to gain life to proc the Unknown Seed, which will proc the 4th Legendary for Pot of Greed and give you an item on the ground to let you even, initiate the glitch. In this example, I'm going to be using Super Baby, and it's best to store the effect of Super Baby one step at a time as you'll get more bang for your buck per se, because you'll store the 20% in the background, and then when you get the 30%, it'll be a full 30% that you get, so you'll store that in the background instead of just going straight for the 30. After you've stored it for the last iteration, you'll refund the dark ability and rinse and repeat. Now, on to something I call like the stutter. As I mentioned before, there's another way to tell what step you're on while doing the glitch without having the unknown darkness counter at the bottom, and instead having the solar or lunar eclipse. I'm still using the unknown darkness here, but it's the same for the eclipse. Okay. So if you don't obtain an effect before trying to drop the darkness, it'll kind of do this stutter. So you'll push the button once and it'll seem like nothing happened. But if you look at the bottom of the screen where your indicators are, you'll notice that the 1 disappears when you pushed it. So that was the point where you could have stacked an effect into the background. So in that instance, what you would do is you would push the button again on the unknown darkness to drop it, then pick it back up, drop it again, and pick it back up. And from then on is when you can obtain your next effect to stack into the background. So that's how you can tell with having the solar eclipse and the lunar eclipse when you should be able to stack the background effect. So a few things to note with that is, if after you get the stutter, you move to another item instead and try to drop that, you'll drop the item you picked and you'll drop unknown darkness. But when you look in your inventory, you'll still have unknown darkness in your inventory. So by doing this, you can duplicate your unknown darkness. But if you try to pick up an unknown darkness and drop the original unknown darkness, it kind of deletes one of them. And if you delete the original or the copy, it'll delete them both. The second thing to mention here is there's a way to use this duplication on other items in the same way. As I've done it before, but I don't know exactly how to get it to work. I never put any effort into, duplicating an item, since I could just stack whatever I need into the background. And this stutter effect also happens with spirits. And I first got that glitch when they introduced the Light Spirit Ray. Older players might remember that when they added the Forbidden Sword, after you awakened it into Kyrian, you could obtain another Forbidden Sword. And to fix that, it seems that they stored somewhere in the background that you had both Kyrian and the Forbidden Sword. It seems they did the same thing with the Dark Spirit Shade. So if you had a full inventory of spirits, including Light Ray and maybe a Dark Spirit Shade that you got duped from the King Slime, and you tried to pick up another spirit that you didn't have, the game would be like, there's no way that you could possibly have this many spirits, because you got a full inventory, you got Dark Spirit Shade awakened, and it's storing in the background that you have the other unawakened version of Dark Spirit Shade. So when you would try to pick up another spirit, the game would stutter, and you could pretty much go to a different item and push the button right there, and it would duplicate whatever spirit you was trying to pick up. This is how I used to duplicate myself, like a full inventory of Light Spirit Ray. But after duping them, they seem to not work, because the game is like, you don't really have it. It's just the image. It's not the actual item. It's just the image. So you would have to go to the next room, close the game, reopen it, and when it would reload you back into that next room, it would have all the spirits you just obtained, and they would work just fine. The duplicates would work. So this all brings me back to another point I mentioned earlier. With storing things in the background, you can actually overwhelm the storage. This can be done in a number of ways and impact the game significantly in positive or negative ways. Because storing too many item effects in the background can result in you not being able to obtain new item effects. Some examples of this overwhelming is pretty much you've stored multiple item effects in the background and you've gotten rid of the original item, but you still have the effect. So you come into a shop and now you try to pick up Mana Bone for the first time. But when you use the skill, it doesn't proc its extra effect because the game is thinking there's no way you could have some more effects because you have way too many. Now, you can stack the same item effect in the background unlimited times, it seems. But multiple effects seem to cause, more problems. This limit effect seems to be more easily reached with duplicating unawakened Dark Spirit Shade and like the Forbidden Sword. This limit can also be reached on SKUL effects. So if you got too many different SKUL effects, it can start to negatively impact, gaining more. As I've said, you can stop most timers on SKUL modes except ones like Berserker. But I have in the past overwhelmed the background data with SKUL effects, and the result was when I transformed into Berserker, the mode didn't even gain the timer. It didn't even get the bar under his health in the first place. So I was able to keep that mode indefinitely. I kind of think that when it comes to this like over limit effect, there's a specific moment that the next thing you try to gain glitches out. Like with, Unknown Darkness having a specific moment that you can store something. This overwhelming effect has also resulted in some glitches I've experienced that I haven't been able to like duplicate or perfect. Like the special choices in the shop that are next to the shopkeeper, like the health orbs and the stat boosting items, not going away after I purchase them. So I could just purchase them infinitely. And that could be very useful for the stat boosting items, but I've only gotten it to work on the health orbs and one of the stat boosting items. Just some small things, not even glitches, that I'm going to mention before even closing this all out are things like, the Phantom Quintessence. Like it'll protect you in that trap room with the legendary chest from being damaged by the traps and stuff. It seems like they fixed everything else to being vulnerable except that. And some other things like, I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but if you roll into the Princess box first, the left inscription on the Princess box will be what the clone stamp will have as its double inscription if you roll into it in the same shop. So if you see something on the Princess box that you want on the left, it may be worth it to roll until you get the clone stamp. Additionally, the random inscription item that you get from the extra fifth slot in the shop next to the shopkeeper will continuously re-roll into a different inscription. So like if you have enough money, you could just buy everything else and keep re-rolling that random inscription until it ends up being an inscription item you want. And adding to that, if the random inscription item is the same as an inscription on one of the other four items, the chances that they'll be the exact same, like a dupe of each other, are greatly increased. Now, Console players are going to find doing this glitch, a lot harder for the lack of mods. And the easiest way to get the setup you need is to experiment with different starting setups, as the skulls and items you start with heavily influence what you obtain during your runs. I plan on doing like a video breakdown of that as well if I get enough people that are interested in hearing that. And just like with the heart of the ascetic, items that affect your HP can cause some side effects. So if you have enough in Omen that it drops your HP by half, then you drop it to pick up something that increases your max HP, you'll notice that it kind of rounds your remaining HP up a little bit. And this is how I used to heal my HP in treasure rooms, because it will slowly start to increase by 1, 2, sometimes 3. And this is exactly the thing that made me discover the glitch. There's a long history of how I came to discover the glitch. In short, it was mostly thanks to Mr. Buccanudo's One Punch Man glitch with that quintessence that ended up getting patched. After they patched that and the Pot of Greed glitch, I spent about 2 hours after the update just looking for something else. And that's how I first came across this glitch. And it's been a long and very enjoyable road to this point. Thousands of hours, probably, to be honest, around about 10,000 or so of experimenting and trying new things. A lot of gratitude goes out to Bills for being the creator who originally got me into the game in the first place. He was the whole reason I started playing it. His videos taught me a lot, showed me a lot, that helped me be good at the game and beat the game in my earlier stages. And a huge shout out and thanks goes out to Mr. Buccanudo for the mods, because the mods is probably the sole reason I was even able to discover the glitch so easily. Not only that, but the mods gave me a renewed passion for playing the game, because of how inconsistent it is to get those runs that you want so badly, which I'm sure most can relate to. But at the same time, after you can get whatever you want from the start, I kind of lost interest in the game, because there's no excitement to finding Reaper in the first act when you can get Reaper whenever you want. So the glitch kind of gave me like a renewed excitement to continue playing the game and experimenting and discovering what all it could do. It gave me thousands of more hours of playtime for the game, and without it I probably would have moved on from this game a long time ago, and I hope it can do the same for you. I hope everyone has time to enjoy and experiment with the glitch. It's part of the reason I kind of took so long to even reveal it, because I figured as soon as they update it next, it's going to be patched easily. And lastly, I want to thank all my supporters for their patience, and even thank the impatient ones for their pressure. If anyone has any questions or I didn't explain something right, I'll be answering all questions and comments in the comment section. Enjoy.